So, what I want to talk about this evening is why I moved to Ohio. I moved to Ohio in 2015, about 10 years ago, from Chicago, Illinois. So, that makes people wonder, why would I move from Chicago, Illinois, a world class city, to what was considered an armpit of Northeast Ohio? Why? Um, why? Well, I'll just say that I think it's one of the best decisions I ever made in my entire life. Um, it was actually an accident that I moved here. I never thought I would live here in my entire life. But let's just say why I moved here. Um, I just found this place just going to another place and was really surprised at everything that is here. In fact, when I was going through the state of Ohio, I thought it would be just like Indiana. But boy, was I wrong. There was a lot of different restaurants. The parks were a lot better, or are a lot better than the Chicago area. So my husband and I came here for a number of years before I actually decided to move here. So it was probably, I would say, well over 10 years that we were coming back here after first coming to the state that I actually decided, hey, I want to move here. And what caused me to make that decision to actually move here was the fact that Chicago was starting to get a little sketchy in places. And that was in 2014 when I noticed the changes. And they were subtle um, because we had a new mayor. So when I lived in Chicago, Richard Daley was the mayor for many years, and there was a lot of improvements to the city. And that was also after a lot of renovations happening on the north side, because in the 70s and 80s, the north side had a lot of bad areas. It was like a lot of how people envisioned the south side. Lots of neighborhoods that you would not want to go into even during the day. So a lot of that change was improved, gentrified when I lived in Chicago. So in 2024, things were deteriorating somewhat, especially in downtown Chicago. I saw some areas that were getting a little sketchy, and then I also didn't like the way the state politics were going. We had Blagojevich, then we had Quinn as governor, and I saw that income taxes were probably going to go up, and that actually happened a couple years after I had moved here to Ohio. So, um, and I had a lot of local people, a lot of local Ohioans telling me, hey, if you like it here, you better move here soon, because people are discovering the amenities of Ohio. It was almost like a um, big secret. And so I pulled the plug out of Illinois. I got permission from my employer to work remotely, and so I moved here the summer of 2015, and I haven't looked back. And at the time, I was able to get twice the house that I could ever get in Chicago. But now, if I was to try to buy the same type of house, I would be priced out. Because now the real estate values have almost equalized with Illinois. So that was one of the large advantages to moving to Ohio, was the low cost of real estate, but that's no longer the case. And the property taxes are shooting up too now. So that's no longer an advantage. And then the other advantage is the parks, the condition of the parks. They call them the metro parks. Out in Ohio, when you go to the parks, you don't have to worry about somebody finding your body 2 weeks later in 100 pieces. You can go in there knowing that there's a lot of other people there. The parks are well maintained. There's actual paved trails. There's bathrooms with flushable toilets. Bathrooms that are cleaned on a regular basis, and bathrooms that are open after Labor Day. Unlike the bathrooms on the Chicago lakefront, they would be locked after Labor Day. So that's a huge advantage. And there's parks all over the place, and they have different parks in different counties. And I've gone to a lot of parks, and there's a lot more parks that I haven't gone to, and it's all free. Then Cleveland itself, it's a little Chicago basically. It's got the same amenities. It's got a lot of ethnic restaurants, a lot of different ethnic communities. It's got culture. However, there's some parts of Cleveland, like Chicago, that are sketchy, especially on the east side. Just downright horrible with abandoned buildings and all that stuff, but I'm sure it's like that in every city. And, property taxes there are, I think, worse than out in the suburbs where I'm at. I'm in the eastern suburbs. And that's a whole other story as to why I moved to the suburbs as opposed to the city, because I did want to move into something like a loft building, but I compromised. And I'm happy here. So, there are some disadvantages to living in the suburbs. You hear a lot of leaf blowers and lawnmowers, and you have a lot of pettiness, such as what types of plants you allow by the road. I've actually had people complain to me because I had a bowl thistle plant by the road, or I had a bunch of buttercups. They all want it looking uniformly like a golf course, basically. So pretty much that's kind of a petty gripe, but that's a gripe that I have, especially the leaf blowers. They are very loud, and so are the lawnmowers. They use the gas mowers. So I digress. The other advantage to living in Ohio is the temperatures are less extreme than Illinois and Chicago, and the storms are less extreme. It almost seems like the storms kind of weaken when they're around this area. The storms are really strong west of here, and then they weaken, and then they intensify again once they get east of Cuyahoga County, because I'm in Cuyahoga County. So right after they pass through and they're in Geauga County, which is the next county east of me, They just seem to intensify, and then the same south. So I don't get it, but that seems to be what happens most of the time. Last year we got a bad storm, and in this area where I'm sitting, we hardly got any damage, just a few twigs, sticks on the driveway, but just north of me, hundreds of trees were knocked down like toothpicks. That was last August, and then the same. West, there was a lot of damage in the Parma area. East, south, and north. Just hundreds and hundreds of trees just knocked down, and they're still in the metro parks. You go in the metro parks and you see all these trees just knocked down like toothpicks. So that gives a good example, as to how the weather is. But then we get the lake snow. We get a lot of lake snow here, though we haven't gotten the same amount of lake snow that we got, that people have said that they used to get in years past. Last year we got a lot of snow, but still not 60 inches of snow. I don't know how, maybe 30 inches. But we got a lot of lake snow, and the lake snow comes out of nowhere. It'll be sunny for 1 minute, and then the next minute you're in a whiteout. Literally, you can't see 10 feet in front of you. And then a lot of times it's sunny, and it's snowing heavily. I've seen that. It's a common occurrence, especially in January and February. So I kind of like it, though I don't have to drive that far. So I guess if I had to drive 20 miles to work every day, I would probably not like it as much. So that's another advantage. The people are very friendly in Ohio. They're very open, helpful. And then it seems like businesses are still, in some parts, seem to be doing okay, but in other parts they're not. Older parts of the suburbs, you see a lot of empty storefronts, but in other parts you don't see it as much. And then what I liked, there's a town, Mayfield Heights. They have a main drag, Mayfield Road, and there's always a ton of independent businesses. It's not like everywhere else you go where it's just chain after chain after chain. There's just all these different businesses that you can't find anywhere else. And there are some regional chains like Winking Lizard, and what's the other, there's another one right at the tip of my tongue. So there's a couple regional chain restaurants, and they're pretty good, though you get tired of them after a while. And the other thing I have noticed, there's no Scandinavian restaurants that I can find. And there's very little Cuban restaurants. There is one in, I think, the old Brooklyn area, neighborhood of Cleveland. That's about it. And then there's kind of a vibe where it's more relaxed here. And then also the traffic situation. It's nowhere near how it is in Chicago. Like, I can drive on a Saturday night or Sunday morning, and there's hardly any traffic in this area. I mean, they're probably all on the highway going to Cleveland or something. I'm sure the night scene is got a lot of traffic, but I'm kind of not into that scene. I'm more of an outdoors person. So, but it just seems like you can drive anywhere a lot quicker, even during rush hour, if you can believe it. And there's not as much traffic. There's traffic. There is rush hour, but it's not nearly as bad as Chicago. Nothing near it. And downtown Cleveland has a good amount of stuff there, but it's nothing like Chicago. But I kind of like it. Just the last time I was in Chicago, it again wasn't what I experienced when I actually lived in Chicago. Let's say that. And I think if I still lived in Chicago, I would be going nuts because I don't think you can do what you could do. You can't do now what you could do before in Chicago. Like, I would be walking by myself at 6:30 in the morning to catch the L. It was like a mile away, or mile and a half down Irving Park. I had no problems. I could walk by myself, and I used to walk up Lakeshore Drive by myself and walk from downtown to the northwest side to get home. No problems. I would not ever think of doing that now. It's just not the same anymore. And back when I lived in Chicago, there were so many businesses, especially in Water Tower Place. You had Lord and Taylor, you had Neiman Marcus, you had Marshall Fields, and then Macy's moved in there. I was still there when Macy's was there. And then you had Carson's downtown. And then they closed and were replaced by Target. That then I heard that a lot of stores closed in Water Tower Place, including Macy's. So I don't know what it's like now, but from what people tell me, the retail is not nearly as it used to be, and just the politics out there, it's something I don't want to be around. So like I said, I'm glad I moved to Northeast Ohio. I'm very happy here. I can drive. Like, I feel like I'm almost in the country now, and then I can drive my car into downtown Cleveland within a half hour. And then I can take a rapid transit. There's a rapid transit 2 miles away. And when I didn't have a car for 2 years after I moved to Ohio, I was able to walk the 2 miles to the rapid transit to go to jury duty, because I was never called to jury duty in all the years I lived in Illinois, but then in the first couple years I was called to jury duty in Ohio. So then I had to take the train, so I did. And the rapid transit's very clean. I was happy with it. The only thing about downtown Cleveland that I noticed is the fact that it just seems a little menacing. Even as late as a year ago when I went there, it's like after 5 o'clock when people go home from work, even though people live downtown now, it just seems like there's a menacing vibe there. And I always listen to my gut. If my gut just says, it's probably not the greatest place to be, and this is downtown, public square, all that stuff. So then I just make sure I just head out, So that's the thing about Cleveland. I mean, we've been on the boat tours and stuff on the lake, and we're walking to our car 10 o'clock at night. And I think, just like in Chicago, you have to have situational awareness. But it's not a place where I'd be walking by myself. I don't think anywhere in Cleveland, downtown Cleveland. So, but that's the same with now Chicago. And I think that it's not what city you're in nowadays. I think it's all cities that you don't want to be walking by yourself at certain times of the day and even during the day. The cities are not the same as they used to be. And I'm waving my hand because there's a bunch of mosquitoes now. It's that time of the day that they come out in mass. So, I really like it here. I can drive anywhere. And then, in fact, I didn't have a car, like I kind of mentioned, for 2 years. And I kind of challenged myself to see if I could get around without a car. And the answer is yes, even though I'm in the east suburbs. There are grocery stores nearby within walking distance. And for me, I walk everywhere. So maybe what walking distance is for me is not walking distance for everybody. But my walking distance is a little farther. So I was able to walk 2 miles to Trader Joe's and stuff. And then what I did, I would rent a car every so often and then stock up. And the only reason I got a car is because of boredom. I mean, it's not like Chicago. It's not as dense. So then I got a car so I could get around. And then Chicago, I didn't have a car for 12 years because I was working downtown and working from home. And I took the elevated train back, to work. So, so if I really didn't want to have a car here, I could do it. We could probably just have one car. And eventually we will just have one car, but we're just doing our own things most of the time. So yeah, so I'm happy here. I can't think of anything else. The people in the town are nice, except for the pettiness about, what are you planting by the road type of thing. The gripe I have, the biggest gripe, is the property taxes. My property taxes have gone up a lot since I moved here. And there is a local income tax. But all in all, even with the local income tax, my state income taxes, including the local income tax, is less than Illinois. Because they have a progressive tax rate, and I'm always getting a refund from Ohio, even though I try to put the maximum amount of exemptions, because I'd rather pay taxes. I'd rather pay a little bit for my taxes than get these refunds. But I can never stop getting a refund, so it's usually around $300 or so. And I pay into the local tax. So all in all, I'm just glad I got out of Illinois. And like I said, again, it's about the best decision I ever made in my life. I got out of Illinois in time. I got to Ohio before everybody else started moving into Ohio, because now every area of Ohio, the property values are surging. No matter what area, everything's getting expensive. So I think the values of where I'm at, they've gone up at least 50%. So, and that was mostly since 2020. 2020 into 21, that's when you saw the big surge in values, because I didn't really see this huge surge prior to 2020, 2021. So I think it kind of corresponds to just the overall politics too, and the overall inflation of everything. So I'm actually hoping someday that these values come down. It's insane, but that's another whole discussion. The real estate, the property taxes, the blah blah blah. But if you want to move to Ohio, you maybe relative to other places in the country, there still might be some deals to be had. But from what I hear, I don't think there are many deals unless you want to move to Cleveland and buy a fixer-upper in a neighborhood that's kind of iffy, if you will. Though some people have bought places, and it's fine. You just have to take a risk and then fix it up and make it your own, and get along with your neighbors, stick with your neighbors for security. So would I do it again? Absolutely. So I'd like to hear from you. What places have you moved to, if you have moved, and what places would you like to move to, and what places would you think are the best places in the country? Do you have a place that you think is a utopia? So I'd just be curious to hear where other people have relocated, and if they're happy, and then if they're wanting to move somewhere. So let me know, and please subscribe, and stay tuned for other videos. Until next time. Another big advantage to living in Ohio is the fact that you can get a large yard. Most of the houses have fairly big lots, even in the city itself. That I found surprising, and most houses have fireplaces, even though I still don't use my fireplace because I never had a fireplace. In Illinois, we never really thought of having one. Most people didn't have them, unless you're in places like Barrington Hills where you have large homes. So I was fortunate enough to get a large lot for a very reasonable price, and I'm not really considered in a wealthy area. So, well, I have to say now that's not the case. There are a lot of wealthier people moving into the area, though at the time I moved here it wasn't the case. So was before a lot of middle class. But because everything's getting expensive, and I think people are moving here from California and New York State and places like that, builders are building a lot of larger homes. So it's bringing in a lot of people with a lot of money, let's say. So that I wanted to mention. So I do like the wild look. What I did in the past, I collected a lot of seeds. I bought a lot of wildflower seeds, and I recreated some wildflower gardens just to attract the pollinators. because before this was all a bunch of crabgrass that would simply collect water every time it rained, and then you would have a bunch of mosquitoes. I mean, the mosquitoes are bad, but before, when you had all the pools of water sitting there for days and days on end, you would have swarms of mosquitoes. So that's pretty much why I planted these plants and kind of made it dense, just to collect the water, and then also to keep the water away from the house. And it makes for more interesting landscape. And it does attract the bats, which in turn decreases the mosquitoes. So this is kind of a little haven. I get a lot of fireflies. Because as they say, make your own garden, so that's what I've tried to do. And you have a lot of like-minded people that way around here, which is nice. So I was very fortunate to be able to discover Northeast Ohio when I did, because then I was able to take advantage of an opportunity to make a good financial decision in purchasing this place. And I don't know how long I will stay here, you know, when I'm old and decrepit. There'll be a time when I won't be able to handle all the work it takes, and I'll probably get something smaller, because I do everything myself. I don't use a landscaper. Most people do use landscapers in these areas, which there's nothing wrong with. A lot of people don't like yard work, but I choose not to, because I actually consider the yard work my personal gym. Then it kind of reduces stress. Then I can make it my own. It's kind of my palette. So as I make more videos, I will document some of the work I do. I will probably even document cleaning gutters and getting on ladders. Who knows? But I do it, and I don't mind. Though I hate doing it when I have to do it, but it's, like I said, it's a personal gym. So that's all I have at this time.